Welcome to the Plan Commission meeting of October 2nd. Please turn off your cell phones so that they do not interrupt our proceedings. And if you have not been at a Plan Commission meeting before, we will go over each item one by one. The staff will give us a staff report, introduce the item. We will ask technical questions, and then we will open it up to the audience for comment. When all have spoken, then we will bring it back to the commission and usually take our vote. So let's call the roll.
David Borsick,
Present.
Ed Bowen, Steve Cummings,
Here.
Michael Ford,
Here.
John Hintz, John Kiefer, Robert Weigart, Thomas Perry,
Here.
Andrew Mott,
Here.
Thomas Voitek, Kathleen Propp.
Here. We have the minutes of September 18. What's your pleasure?
Move for approval. Second.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Minutes are approved. First item, residential design standards for a porch alteration on 202 West Melvin Avenue.
Thank you. So as many of you will recall, this item actually came to us at the September 4th Plan Commission meeting. At that time, here's some images actually showing the property. At that time, the applicant had wanted to remove the steps and the piers that are in the front there that you can see. We as staff had some reservations about that. We presented, the applicant presented, and at that meeting, you all voted to lay it over until this meeting to give us some time to work with the applicant and exhaust some options. We are still in the process of actually securing some bids, some estimates from licensed masons and concrete contractors. We have heard from at least from one of them for sure that it is potentially going to be cost effective to repair, I should say, repair what is there instead of actually taking it off. We'd like a little bit more time to get some more of that information in. So what we were recommending is that we lay it over up to the November 6th meeting. Maybe it won't have to take that long, but we were hoping to obtain a little bit more information from some of these contractors. You know, we've heard from some of them, but haven't gotten estimates from all of them, to determine the viability of working with the existing porch and knee wall structure. So we have been meeting with the applicant. We have been talking to contractors. That's kind of where we are right now on this one.
Any more questions? Do we need to open this up to the public for comment if we're recommending layover?
What do you think, Darren?
Having said that, I'll do that.
Yeah, why don't you do it?
Is there anybody here wanting to speak to this item about the porch renovation at 202 West Melvin Avenue? Anybody here? Okay, back to the commission now.
Move to lay over up till the 6th of November.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, call the roll, please.
Borsick,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Perry,
Aye.
Mott,
Aye.
Propp.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-0 to lay over.
Okay, next item is residential design standards variance to allow materials not similar to the existing cladding and design character at 647 Wagoo Avenue.
Thank you. So this one also came to us back about a month ago at the September 4th Plan Commission meeting. We'll kind of go through it here. As a refresher for the Plan Commission members and anybody watching, I'd like to just kind of go over the applicable ordinance. In our residential design standards for the city here, exterior patchwork, repair, or reconstruction that results in a multi-textured effect is typically not permitted. We as staff talked to the applicant, determined that the original proposal of just replacing a plane on the front facade of the house would be potentially a patchwork type repair. So we wanted to bring it to the Plan Commission for consideration. The home is now currently clad in asphalt siding, not the best material for cladding a property, as you'll see, but that's what's on it. All of it is clad in that currently. The applicant wishes to re-side the front facade with vinyl or fiber cement siding. I think it was kind of open. She may clarify today which route she wants to go, but either way, both of those have a different texture than the asphalt siding that's on the house. Only one facade would be resided, so it would still be, according to our ordinance, the way we look at it, potentially patchwork repair. Here's the subject site in blue, outlined in blue, I should say. I showed this before at an earlier meeting. I took the wrong mouse there. Okay. You can see it here on the corner of Wagoo and Mill Street here. A lot of the properties immediately around it are single family, though there is some multifamily down to the south here. Some urban mixed use properties, mixed commercial and residential. Land use recommendation is residential with a commercial node for this area for the 10 and 20 year land use recommendation. Here's the aerial of the site, which was shown before too, just refreshing you here. So it is reasonably prominent. Some images that the applicant provided us that we had in the original presentation, but just wanted to put up there. You can see that asphalt siding there. These aren't perhaps the most clear, but you get a sense of what is there right now. Some of the trees obscure some of the area that we're going to look at, but I've got an image of that. Here is an image showing the damaged area in question on the front facade, so it's pretty close up. I went out there with one of our other planners. We looked at the property. You can see kind of the deteriorated nature of some of the siding here around the window trim. This area here is the damage is probably about 4 by 8, maybe something like that. Maybe not quite that big. It's a pretty small area on the front facade, just adjacent to the porch, and that was originally what the applicant wanted to patch. And then she revised her proposal to reside the front facade. It came to Plan Commission. We had some discussions with the applicant, went on site, and she seemed open to residing the whole front facade, including this porch area, with one siding material. This was the original vinyl siding, just kind of showing an image of it. Some information on it should be in your packets too. Context photo from the street view, looking east here, I believe, down towards that corner there. You can't quite see the subject property that well over here. Most of the residential properties, varied character but similar scale. This is looking west, so you can see the subject property here on the left, and then some of these other residential properties with varying sidings there. So we discussed this with the applicant, and we got on board with what we had some discussion, went back and forth, came to a proposal that we think we can recommend approval of a variance from the residential design standards to allow a potential residing of this property using either the vinyl or fiber cement with the following conditions and findings. So basically, the applicant would reside the entire front facade, not just a patch of it, and not just one plane of it, but the entire front, with one material, or consistent material. Ensure that the appearance and installation of that material are consistent, and any future residing of any facade on the home shall occur with the same materials as used for this residing here. If not, the applicant would have to file a separate request and come back to the Plan Commission for another design standards variance.
Okay, technical questions, David.
Is the, either the vinyl siding or the, was it masonite type siding, both board-on-board type of a look, or are they at all in appearance and texture consistent with what's on the existing siding?
I know the vinyl, I would imagine, would be the traditional lap appearance, so that would be different in texture. They could get a similar color. The texture would not be identical. It would be a little bit different. So that is something that I personally didn't like. There is that potential that there would be a little bit different texture appearance to it.
What about the other,
The fiber cement too.
Fiber cement.
I think that too, you can see here from a distance, the fiber cement would have a little bit different texture too. This, if you go close, actually I gotta go back another, there it is. You can kind of see here, fiber cement would not have this appearance. I know the applicant, I think, talked about potentially painting in some of the seam lines. We're not quite sure how that would look, so we weren't gonna recommend that. But from a distance, yeah, I think there'd still be potentially a little bit different texture to it. This is a little bit more textured. That would be a little bit smoother, I think.
thank you.
Okay, other technical questions? Go ahead, Michael.
Just curious, those of us who have been here longer, has there been a request that has come like this before to redo just one?
I am not aware of
Inside.
one since I've been here. I don't know if any came in before me.
I don't,
I can't recall anything.
Okay. Okay, just curious for precedent.
Any others? Okay, anybody from the audience here wishing to speak on this item? Come to the podium and give your name and address, please.
Mary Warnke, at 5110 Stretch Lane in
Okay.
I guess primarily, I just wanted, again, to, I spoke at the last meeting. Again, I just wanted to reiterate kind of the situation that we're facing here, in that you have kind of an extreme hardship situation here with the owners, and that our utmost to determine, what our options are here in the home. They have owned it for a very long time, so they're certainly not, fly-by-night landlords. We've owned this property for probably since the 1950s, if I remember correctly. So we have been obviously maintaining it through that cycle. The material here is specifically in that picture around the window. That was not the way that the property was. I actually asked the guy to come in when we sealed that up to take off some of the material around the window so that I could see if there was any water damage, that had occurred around there, so that I wanted to understand if we needed to replace the sills and so forth. So certainly that was not, the way that it was presented previously. Again, I do have the two options with the vinyl versus the other material. They both have some texture to them. They're not flat. The vinyl has kind of a ridge that goes horizontally, and the other material has some ridges that are going vertically. So they do both have some texture. It would not be completely flat. Again, to reiterate, we would do, either with either solution, we would go and get a color that was a match from the paint store. One material is meant to be painted, the other is not. But again, we have some samples that we are confident we can get extremely close to that particular color gray. I did also agree, as you stated, to cover that entire, including the porch, which we hadn't really considered previously, but we would certainly, I think, be able to cover that as well. So again, I think the balance of the home, while the material is certainly older, there are no significant areas of damage. So we would like to kind of make those changes when we deem it necessary and when we have funding available to make that happen. I did, based on your request at the last meeting, take a look at some other options for the owners in terms of grants or loans through the city of Oshkosh and AdvoCap and a number of other areas, but it seemed that everything really was available only for owner occupy, and so that didn't seem to be a good solution for us. So I guess I just wanted to, again, explain that we really have been doing our best and looking at all the different options available, and we want to have a solution that is complementary to the home and looks good in the neighborhood. And I guess I feel that the solutions that we, have outlined would do that. So,
Okay.
all right, thank you.
Well, thank you for working with the staff on this. Anybody else that wants to speak on this item? Anybody else? Okay, back to the commission.
I'd like to just say I appreciate condition number 2, so that you're looking at future renovations or repairs to keep the material consistent in the future. So I think that wasn't here the last time we met. I think it's a good condition to put on, and so thank you for adding that.
And our stance too is that though it may not be ideal right now, because only one facade is being recited under this proposal, as a matter of course, the other facades are gonna require work at some point. It's gonna deteriorate more, and then it's, inspections may order it off, or, the applicant may just decide or be able to recite them, and then that's where, we're looking with this second condition. Yep.
Would there be any issue with the same material being available in 5 years, 10 years, whenever, or a similar?
Potentially, although I think, the vinyl and the fiber cement have been out there and seem to be pretty easy to come by. So I
Okay.
would be surprised if they couldn't get something that would be comparable at that point.
Okay. David?
There's, in my mind, two sort of distinctly different products. By staff's experience or anybody's experience, is one more durable than the other, or, if you will, is there a preference?
It depends, because there's different grades of both. You can get very high-end fiber cement, that has, I can't remember what warranty, but, some of the thicker products that are much more durable will withstand the test of time. You can get pretty decent vinyl too. Kind of depends on what product the applicant's looking at. It's tough to answer because, there are varying grades of each.
I understand the nuances. Thank you.
Okay. Michael?
Just quick, I do appreciate the effort to put in the conditions, but at the same time, I am going to be voting no on this. And it goes back to the discussion we had last week about financial hardship not being justification for creating a variance of this kind. I think it's a unique situation, but it still is a rental property, and I think it sets a bad precedent if we allow this to occur on this rental property, even with that situation, that's something we're willing to do. I don't want a situation where we have landlords coming up and saying, well, financially, I can't do the whole thing, so I'm going to put this patchwork together. So, yes.
Steve?
Thank you. To answer Michael's earlier question about anyone coming before us before on this issue, I don't recall it either, but if you go around the campus area, there's a lot of rental properties that have been kind of patchwork side by side by side. There's some on Merritt Street, which go down every day, and I think one burned, but there's a combination of materials and colors in some of these rentals. We're trying to really upgrade the community. One of the areas is rental properties, and I think if we keep allowing stuff to sort of do this here and do that here and do this here, and I think we're sort of defeating our purpose to upgrade really the community. So I can't support this either.
Let me just comment from a staff perspective. I understand where you're at on that. The reason we're a little bit more comfortable on this is that it's not a patchwork on the facade itself. The whole facade, a single facade, is being adjusted versus the rest of the facade. So if we were going to fill in that one piece, go back to that picture.
Sure.
If we were going to fill in just this one, where is it?
There it is.
Right here. If we were just going to allow something like that, just put a different material in there, that would cause us great concern. We'd never support it. We were able to get a comfort on this one is where we weren't before, where they're doing this whole facade. So when you look at it from the street, it's a consistent material. So that's where we are from a staff perspective on it. So I certainly understand where you guys are coming from.
Any other discussion? I think we need a motion.
I'll move approval based and with the conditions stated.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any more discussion? Call the roll, please.
Warsick,
No.
Cummings,
No.
Ford,
No?
Perry,
Aye.
Mott,
No.
Prop.
Aye.
Motion denied. 4-2.
What are her options now?
I'll have to look at that. I'm
Okay.
not sure I don't know if the Board of Appeals is the other option. I have to look at the code. I'm not positive.
Okay.
Otherwise, we can, as staff, we can see if there's anything else we might be able to work with her on.
Okay.
You know, I don't know if any of our,
Well, if there's something we can do, I hope we try.
not
Okay.
sure if any of our funding programs, but we'll see. We'll see what we
Okay.
can do.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, item number 3, access control variance for reduced lateral clearance at 101 West Snell.
Thank you. So here's the subject site. It's located on the south side of Snell Road, west of North Main Street. The site has 2 light industrial buildings and associated parking and loading area with 2 accesses from Snell. The eastern access actually shares parking with the commercial site to the east. The surrounding area is mostly commercial and industrial uses, along with some residential uses to the north. So some additional parking areas have been added, and they're now in the process of getting permits for those additions. So there's additional parking here along the east driveway, and then 2 additional parking areas along the western access. The additional parking along the eastern access has a 40-foot lateral clearance, where a 75-foot lateral clearance is required. Staff is supportive of the reduction of lateral clearance, as most of the surrounding sites that are commercial or industrial do have substandard lateral clearance. However, the adjoining and shared parking area has about a 47-foot lateral clearance, and we are recommending that they match that. So that would require them to remove the northernmost stall. Also, Public Works reviewed this, and they noted that the lateral clearance should match the shared parking area to the east to prevent further access concerns related to the truck movements coming in and out of the loading area from Snell. They also noted that the new parking areas must meet collect and convey requirements for stormwater runoff. And staff recommends approval of the access control variance to permit reduced lateral clearance from West Snell Road with the following conditions: the northernmost parking stall removed to match the lateral clearance of existing shared parking area to the east, and stormwater collect and convey plans be submitted and approved to meet city stormwater requirements.
Technical questions? I have one. We aren't usually asking things like this to do stormwater mitigation. What?
I guess they wanted to make sure that, that was done because we did not see the plans come in yet for the stormwater collect and convey. So,
Sometimes we put a condition on there that's already in the code, but we want to reinforce that it needs to get done.
Oh, okay. Okay. Any other technical questions? Anybody here from the audience wishing to speak to this item? Lateral clearance. Seeing none, back to the commission.
Move for approval of conditions.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Any more discussion? Call the roll, please.
All right, Warsick,
Excuse me, aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Perry,
Aye.
Mott,
Aye.
Prop.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-0.
Okay, rezone lots, item 4, the certified survey map at the corporate business park over on Oshkosh Ave.
Thank you. It's just a little minor request. This is a rezone request for 2 outlots at the former municipal or Lakeview or Lakeshore Municipal Golf Course. Recently, for this past summer, there was a dedication of an extension of North Keller Street along here, which resulted in the creation of 2 outlots on the south side of North Keller Street. Now, the original zoning for the whole golf course was I institutional district, and with the new separation of these 2 outlots from the parent parcel, it really serves no purpose to the city. So last month, the Common Council approved the disposition of this outlot to the property to the south, but still retains its current or institutional zoning. So what the city's asking to do is rezone these 2 parcels to be consistent with the parcels to the south, which is the corporate business park with the planned development overlay. So with that, the comprehensive plan does recommend this little area for parks, recreation, and open space, but that'll be rectified with the forthcoming update to the comprehensive land use map, so that will not be an issue in a couple weeks. So with that, it's just an aerial photo of the site showing the nature of the property. And staff is in support of the zone change from institutional to corporate business park with the plan development overlay as requested.
Technical questions? Seeing none. Anybody from the audience here to speak on this rezoning? Okay, seeing none, back to the commission. What's your pleasure?
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Can't we fight for him now?
Okay, call the roll. Wake up, folks.
Forsythe,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ford,
I,
Harry,
Aye.
Mott,
Aye.
Crop.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-0.
Okay, another zone change from suburban mixed use to neighborhood mixed use with planned development overlay out on Lake Butamore Drive.
Thank you. So we have a zone change request that came to a workshop maybe about 2 months ago for discussion. They're looking to do a school along Lake Butamore Drive. In doing so, necessitated the need for a zone change. So here's the subject site. Is along the west of Lake Butamore Drive, Highway 45, just south of Scala Road. So the existing land uses, it's mainly an agricultural property. It does contain 1 home and a significant portion of wetlands and kind of waterway on it. So the site is very limited from an environmental standpoint. So the zone change request is to go from the suburban mixed-use district, which it currently carries, to a neighborhood mixed-use district with a plan development overlay. The use of that plan development overlay would be to give the petitioner a little bit of flexibility within the use of the property. Right now, they're only looking at using a small portion of the property, and then there could be additional uses of the property in the future. So the PD gives them a little bit of flexibility that they could come back to this board and the council and discuss maybe other uses for the remaining portion of the property. That's why staff leaned a little bit more towards using the NMU than maybe going to a straight institutional zoning. It's a large parcel, and we didn't necessarily want to see it just this use take up the whole thing. We wanted to leave that flexibility in there because the comprehensive plan does call for commercial land use in this area. So here is just a very broad conceptual site plan that the applicant is working off of. This is for an educational use that would be approximately 5 buildings, approximately 3,000 square feet each. That's where I say they're looking at only using a small portion of the building. There could still be some opportunities for other uses in the future. With that, staff is recommending approval. We do know it's a very broad GDP we're working with at this point. The applicant is in just the very early process of purchasing this property and working through their plans. Prior to purchasing the property, they at least wanted to get that base zoning level approved before they move forward with their SIP and their more specific plans. So as staff notes in the staff report, usually at this point, when granting a base standard modification, we would be looking for that trade-off. What are we getting by granting a base standard modification? For this specific project, we're actually looking at, we'll evaluate that at the SIP, start to get more of that trade-off of why we're giving you a base standard when the plans are firmed up a little further. So we do recommend approval of the rezoning and the general development plan with a specific with a base standard modification to allow the indoor institutional use for a school.
David?
How mu, if you can go back to the aerial?
Yep.
Or that'll work. How much is buildable?
So this is the wetland.
Or what isn't buildable, maybe?
This, kind of the overhatched green here is kind of the wetland area. So basically the buildable area is kind of in here.
And what is the, do you know what the net of left is?
I do not.
Was there any indication at your level of what other developments would be planned in there?
Right
as
now, they
opposed-
don't have any plans for anything outside of the school.
When the petitioner comes, I'll talk to him. Thank you.
Okay, yes.
This property's been for sale for a really long time.
Correct. This property has been zoned commercially and for sale for a significant amount of time. It has some limited access challenge, I should say, it has some access challenges as a commercial property.
Okay. Any other technical questions? Anybody from the audience that wants to speak to this, please?
Hi, Ben Ganther. Carrie was supposed to be...
Address, please.
Oh, sorry, 6030 County Road A, Oshkosh. There's less buildable than what you're showing there. On the south end of the property, there's a gas line traversing the property with an easement, so you can't build over that. So you'd almost, all this down here is not buildable, so if you'd raise it up. So you've got, I'll see if I can read this, about 20 acres, is that right, Chuck? Minus that gas line easement and little island that's left is included in that. So it's less than 20 acres buildable out of, what, 72 acres? Okay, so there's not a tremendous amount of buildable property. There is that portion to the north that would be buildable. And again, we're probably a couple of years out, so we're just trying to be able to close on the plan, on the property, and buildings a few years out. You have the extent of our drawings right there.
David?
50 by 60, these buildings would be anomaly 50 by 60, right?
Yes.
Are the,
That's the program with the Acton School program. It's a Socratic method of teaching.
but are these going to be real buildings, or are these trailers, or?
Double wides. No, they're real buildings.
Are they?
Yes.
No,
They're true real buildings, foundation, substantial. It could be two-story, yeah. Haven't figured it out that far yet, but that's the program. When you get the franchise for the Acton school system, that's what they call for, are these 3,000 square foot classrooms. The middle one is like an art and music building, and then, you know, the other grades. So it would start with 2 or 3 buildings and grow until you get to 5 buildings.
Just a follow-up, do you have, as you get further into it, examples of other campuses that are similar?
Sure, you could look on the internet, but when we come in for the SIP, we could certainly bring that along.
You probably just said this, but how much buildable land after Acton Academy is built will you have left on that north end? Wild.
10 acres, maybe 8, 10 acres, rough
Okay.
guess. I mean, that's
Not
might
that
not
much.
even be the final. That's stretched out. That may get compressed or
Right.
turned into a radius. We just don't know yet. We have done no design development on it yet. We're just trying to show what, you know, the initial use is, so that we can get the zoning change and close on the property. That's why all these attorneys are sitting here. A lot of billable hours in the front row.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions? Evidently not. Anybody else that wants to speak on this item?
I can just briefly say something.
Billable hours.
Billable hours.
Charles Williams, 1416 Menominee Drive, Oshkosh, and I represent the Martha W. Moore Trust, and they are the owners of the property. Martha Moore was a English teacher at Oshkosh High School. Her best friend was Gladys Vitamonis, who is one of the outstanding English teachers they've ever had there, and she was outstanding. And her husband was John Moore, the attorney. They used this as a farm property. They raised, John had Arabian horses on the site. He's been, the farmhouse still exists, the farm buildings are gone. John Moore passed away, I believe, in 2003, and Martha in about 2010, I believe. And we've had it on the market pretty much after John passed. And the property does have challenges, of course, with the wetlands, but it's also a beautiful site. It'll be a fantastic location for a school. It also has access to the Weeawash Trail. I think it's a good use. We considered other things, like try to get a quick trip or something there. They don't want to get on there. We don't want a quick trip, to be honest, but it's a beautiful site, and I think this is a great use for it. And I think the buyer will do a great job, and we're hoping that you'll pass it so we can sell it and be done. And look forward to a school. And I'm sure Martha and John would like this use. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wanting to speak to this item? If not, back to the commission. David?
I certainly don't, in concept, have any problem using it as a school or institutional. I may have a problem having the initial zoning other than only as institutional, without any kind of vision of what the balance of the property is going to be. And secondly, without seeing it, I have a real issue of trying to figure out what 5 50 by 60 foot buildings are going to look like on a site without seeing any examples. I mean, it could be really, really slick, and it could be not slick.
I think that's the benefit of the plan development, is we'll have that opportunity.
No, I understand it.
I remember institutional doesn't mean the only thing you can do out in schools. Even with those institutional, there are some office-related things that could take place there.
Such as?
Offices.
Any kind of business offices?
It's pretty limited in those office-related uses.
Once again.
It's limited, but again, we have the benefit of the PD where we could be more flexible on uses if we so choose.
Oh, that's what concerns me. I would like
Well,
to
we
have-
will-
I would like to, personally, I'd like to see as tighter zoning as opposed to flexibility without knowing any idea what's planned in that area. I don't know what other.
Is your vote riding on this?
Huh?
We have somebody in the audience waving his hand wildly. If your vote's riding on this, we might be able to call him back, but we'll have some more commission discussion. Anybody else that wants to speak to this?
Potential.
Okay, petitioner is here. I understand the petitioner is
Open it up.
here. We'll open it back up to public comment because you just came in.
I think,
Maybe you'd be better to speak about that then.
I think we need to,
trying to get back up there, so.
let's refresh some of the concerns that we've heard.
Sure.
Mark, why don't you go?
So a little bit of, it sounds like David's concerns are both with the, I guess, nature and type of these buildings.
Sure.
As well as maybe other uses that could potentially be on the site in the future. Does that sum it up, David?
Correct.
In addition to just the long-term vision of what you see happening out here on the site.
Well, the long-term vision is for it to be the school. We don't have any plans for anything else to ever be on the site. Of course, I can't speak to what would happen beyond my involvement in the project, decades from now, but as long as we are the owners and in charge of the property. We have no other plans for the property other than to have our school on there. We like the fact that it's a large piece of property that is surrounded by essentially wetland, that we can just kind of have sort of a private nature surround for our school. So we have no other plans for the property other than the school.
What are your thoughts for the buildings? Has there any thought been given to how they're going to look and how, I know this is real preliminary because.
Yeah. To be honest, we've been really focused on the Howard right now, and I think if anybody has been through that project at all since we've finished it, I think that speaks to the fact that we will be doing a very high quality product on this site. It'll be a really nice high-end facility. I know that's a very different, we did a renovation there, and this is going to be a new build, but we will be doing something very high quality and probably really beautiful and special.
Would you,
Go ahead.
would you have any problem if it was just zoned institutional?
From a zoning standpoint, we would have to go back and do a comp plan amendment.
That's kind of the quandary that we're in on this and why we're recommending the.
Sorry, what did you say? You'd have to go back to what?
A comp plan amendment to do institutional zoning here. It's why one of the reasons staff chose the NMU district. Even to do what they want to do in institutional, you still have to go through a conditional use permit. Staff was a little more comfortable with the NMU base standard with the PD.
What does the comp plan call for?
Commercial.
And it's institutional, okay.
Institutional would not be a zoning district that would match up with commercial.
So we were trying to accommodate our zoning and comp plan. So this is the path. This was the path of least resistance to get where we wanted to on this to get to this particular use. It wasn't the cleanest. We understand that, but it's what gets us down the road, and I think it provides us with the protection that we want. If you come back with just an institutional, some of the concerns that you have, we're not going to hit. We're not going to have that review of the architecture and that quality that you're when they come back for the SIP, we're going to have a crack at taking a look at the architecture to ensure that it is a quality development.
Okay. Any other questions of the petitioner? No? Okay, thank you very much. All right, Thomas?
I just want to say, having lived out there, the preliminary design that they have right now really is the only place where they can put buildings. It's the highest part of that land. And they're not going to be able to dig that deep as it is. Even though it's the highest part of the land, it probably has enough room for a foundation, but that would be about it. The land to the north, I would be fine with leaving it the way it is because it would be very difficult to build on anyway, even though it's labeled as buildable. It would be difficult to build on. That's where all the nature is. That's where the birds nest. That's where the rookery is. It's where the cranes go. It would be, if you're going to use that land for something, how it's laid out right there is probably the best option anyway, without being able to do much further, especially north on that land as it is.
Okay, I will entertain a motion. We can still have discussion.
I move approval.
Second.
Okay, now, any more discussion? Okay, if not, we'll call the roll.
Warsick,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Perry,
Aye.
Mott,
Aye.
Prop,
Aye.
motion carried 6-0.
Okay. It's the end of our item business.
yep.
You've got planning director's report now.
Yep, we haven't had a lot. I haven't put this on for a while because we've been pretty busy. So I just want to tell you what's going on a little bit. Potential changes to the county air zone. As you know, it's part of our corridor plan and some of the other things. There's a county air zone regulation that we amended a few years back. When we amended those air zone regulations, I think, or when the county ultimately amended them, we made it really restrictive inside of that air zone area from a development standpoint, to the point where it's making it very hard for us to develop things. I think you saw that proposal for the old JCPenney site that resulted in a storage use being proposed on that site, which I don't think we were all excited about. Well, what happened in some of those instances is they've had a not not pursue uses that might actually work in that center because of the air zone. So what we're trying to do, and hopefully we can get it done this fall yet, or start the process this fall, is engage with a consultant a consultant who does airport planning, airport regulations, and try and get those, trying to come up with a proposal to revise those air zone regulations, and then work with the county to get that approved. So we're hoping to do an RFQ yet within the next month or so to get a consultant on board for that.
Excellent idea.
Any other questions, David?
Yes. Was the part of the last time I think we did the rezone allowed us to put residential on the south side of 20th? That was kind of one of the.
Oh, that, okay. Yeah.
And I think that one of the things, and I concur that you should do it, it's not reasonable seeing what's happening at other major airports throughout the area where there's hotels on the ground, there's all kinds of development. On the other hand, I think we need to look at, and I would support it, especially when you're looking at, at the 41, 44 intersection, but on the same hand, is looking where we're putting single-family, multifamily housing. And I think that we inadvertently created some challenges for ourselves when we forced it through to make the single-family housing on the south side of 20th Street.
I don't disagree with some aspects of that. The nice thing about this particular process is last time it was kind of staff-driven and internal. This time we're actually going to engage with a consultant who works on this kind of stuff.
Yeah, these are questions we should raise when his report comes in.
Number 2 is development of flood storage zoning districts. Steve, you want to come up here and just explain a little bit about that so I don't screw it up?
Did you want to get the map back up?
Just a little. Did we have it up there?
It was up there when I came in, but.
You want the actual flood storage map?
Sure.
This is related to all that work that we've been doing in the Sawyer Creek area.
Where'd Kelly go? Are those saved somewhere? I know Kelly probably knows where they're saved.
I thought that's actually what was up.
No, the flood storage map wasn't.
All right, so just give a brief history of what we're proposing to do.
Essentially, with all the work that we did along the projects along Sawyer Creek, where we had James Road Detention, the county reconstructed the Witzel Avenue Bridge, the state redid the Keller Street project, the city redid Sawyer Street Bridge a few years ago. There's been a lot of projects. All of those resulted in the DNR requiring a map amendment. Well, we went through the process of getting the floodplain map amendments done, and the processes with FEMA and the DNR have changed that after all the improvements, our flood areas were going to increase within the city boundaries, even though we did all of that, because of the fact that we could no longer account for all of the natural occurring detention that is in the rural areas. So if there are farm fields that were restricted by a culvert underneath the roadway, any of those type of things that created kind of some natural detention areas out in the rural areas were not going to be counted under the new map. So we worked through that process with the DNR and FEMA, and essentially came to agreement on where the boundary limits within the city would be, assuming where the floodplain, where these rural detention areas would be located. So this step now is we actually need to enact an ordinance to require that these rural flood storage areas be preserved. Essentially what that means is if there is an area that's mapped on a property that holds 200 acre-feet of storage, it doesn't mean they cannot develop it. It simply means they must maintain that 200 acre-feet of storage on that site. If that means they can dig it deeper and condense it more, so be it. I'm going to assume that generally it's not going to be practical to relocate it on a property, just because it's occurring probably at the lowest point, and it would seem impractical to do that. But so that's the general nutshell of what's going on, and then this will enable us to reduce the floodplain through a number of properties in the city. Some specific ones it impacts is the former Kmart property on the frontage road at Sawyer Creek. Several residential properties down along the area through the creek will be removed from the floodplain. There are a couple of properties that will be added to the floodplain as a result of it as well, simply because the mapping wasn't as accurate as it is today with the LiDAR flights. So there are probably homes that needed the insurance and probably flooded in the past, but they would actually be mapped in the floodway when we're done.
So what we're doing is we're going to start the process of the public engagement, developing the ordinance is relatively easy. There's a model ordinance out there. Getting it mapped within the city is probably not going to be that problematic. Getting it mapped outside in the extraterritorial areas could be more challenging.
Yes.
So we're just alerting you that we're starting that process. Is this something?
I can't find the map I was looking for.
That's all right. We'll move on. We'll move on. Any brief questions on this?
So this is sort of that FEMA map?
This is getting us to the point where we can adopt new FEMA maps, where new FEMA maps would be published.
Does it matter, is this where the location is as opposed to the volumetric of volume of storage?
Location does have a factor in it. To say it couldn't be relocated in the near proximity is probably not accurate, but it's certainly going to be critical to not impact another property, say, even within the next several hundred feet down line if it was removed from a certain area. So if it was tried to pick up and move from an area at a half mile outside the city and somebody tried to move it to right at the city border, well, you might impact all those properties between that half mile point where it was removed previously.
Okay, so if you went further downstream or towards the mouth of Sawyer Creek or whatever, it may not help you if you have the equivalent storage area.
Correct, because you have lost it upstream, so those properties in between may be impacted worse.
We're starting that process. So,
thank you.
Will it ultimately have to be approved by the county?
Correct, because they'll have to adopt
Because
the
it'll be
flood
there,
storage zone.
they'll have to adopt the ordinance.
They actually have a flood storage ordinance. They've not mapped the areas that we'll be requesting them to map, and that's where the public engagement will have to.
But the county will
fall in.
end up having to map it.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And we'll map some areas within the city, but there's less areas in the city that are going to be proposed to be mapped.
And they're generally undeveloped areas along the way as well.
Don't worry about finding the map.
Okay.
It's good.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. 3 potential design code updates. As you know, we're operating under a new zoning code as of January 1st, 2017. As part of our vigorous proactive code enforcement, we're running some issues with some of the signage. We've started to really look at some of the signage, especially the stuff on residential properties. There may be, our ordinance may have some positives and may have some negatives, some impacts that we don't like with respect to signage that's out on a property. With what the Supreme Court did to us, it put us in with the Reed versus Gilbert case, it put us into a particularly tough situation with respect to signage. So we're still wrestling with some of the code issues that allow you to sell your house versus allowing you to have a for lease sale on that. So we're struggling right now with how we enforce that particular code. So this fall we're gonna start looking at potential changes to the temp sign ordinance. It could be as simple as us saying you can have temporary signs in a residential district for 90 days. It could be 90 days plus a conditional use permit if you want to go beyond that. So we need to look at what other communities have done, and we need to explore other possible options. The issue that we're having is we could potentially say no signage, but no signage means no signage. There's a downside to having no signage. We talked about this at the time. Some communities do have it. Some communities will say no signage. We've never wanted to go that direction, so we're gonna put some potential changes together, and we'll get something done this fall yet. Dave?
You talked in terms of residential, but have you looked at all, are you going to consider commercial?
We could consider if there's a pressing need to change some of the commercial stuff, we will.
Well, I'm going to give you a yeah, but, or
Okay.
where, an example, and that's at 44 and 41, where I think there's a sign out there that's been out, it's considered a temporary sign, but it's been, the same sign's been out there at the outlet stores.
There's a temp sign out there? I don't, I'll have to look, I'm not, I'll know it when you tell it to me, but I don't know. Yeah, we can look at those things. So we'll put we might put out a poll and say what other, what should we look at from a sign perspective. Really what, the task that we want is, we think that signage, if it starts to get out of control in residential areas, and we know the areas of the community where it's getting out of control, we're trying to figure out a way to deal with that. So we're going to look at the ordinance again.
All right. Anything else on the director's report?
Nope, we're good.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn before we go into a workshop.
So moved.
Second? All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Workshop.
Workshop, all right, this is.